I never thought I'd sue an HOA, never thought anyone would try to charge me to drive on land my family's owned since 1987, but then an Orange County transplant did exactly that, and my peaceful retirement turned into the single best property fight I've ever had. I'm Mark Henderson, and for 25 years I served in the United States Army Corps of Engineers. My specialty was hydrology and civil engineering, so I know a thing or two about water, and that's where the trouble started. My wife Sarah and I had bought a 5-acre plot on the edge of the Oak Ridge Meadows development just outside the town limits. It was perfect, close enough to civilization for her, but with enough land trees and a small seasonal creek at the far end for me to feel like I could breathe. I spent the first year clearing brush, reinforcing the creek's banks, and building a life that was quiet, orderly, and respectful of the land. It wasn't just property to me, it was a system, and I knew every inch of it. Then came the letter. Official looking, heavy with bureaucracy. It was from the HOA demanding a $1,200 fine for persistent violations of aesthetic standards, specifically the accumulation of mud on my driveway. $1,200 for mud, after a storm that had just flooded half the county. I read the letter twice, trying to make sense of it. The words blurred in front of my eyes. Karen Bishop, HOA president. A woman who wielded her clipboard like a scepter had just declared war. She wasn't just the president of some little neighborhood association, she saw the entire place as her kingdom, and she ruled it with an iron fist. If you think that's insane, hit that subscribe button right now and tell me your own HOA horror story in the comments below. I promise you won't believe where this goes. I knew this wasn't just about mud, it was about submission. The storm had been biblical. My driveway, which sloped gently down from the road, had acted as a natural channel for some of the runoff. It was a mess, sure. But after checking for downed trees and making sure the culvert under the main road wasn't blocked, I planned to clean it up. But Karen wasn't interested in reason. No Karen Bishop in her late 50s was a tyrant of the trivial. She drove a golf cart around the neighborhood doling out violations for trash cans left out 10 minutes too long or garden gnomes deemed tacky. I looked at my driveway mud smeared across the gravel. But then something clicked. This wasn't just storm runoff. The pattern was all wrong. The volume was too much. It was like a light bulb went off. Something had changed the hydraulics of my property. And I had a very strong suspicion that it wasn't Mother Nature. It was something far more arrogant, the Oak Ridge Meadows HOA board led by Queen Karen herself. I wasn't just a homeowner anymore, I was an engineer. And engineers don't just fix problems, they analyze systems. The next morning I walked my property. My eyes were scanning every inch looking for the cause of the flood. I wasn't just checking for storm damage, I was investigating a system failure. And what I found made my blood run cold. At the far end of my property near the creek, the ground was spongier than usual. There were new channels carved into the soil, channels I hadn't seen before. Water, not just a trickle, had moved across the land, flattening the grass in wide, fan-like patterns. My driveway was the delta and the creek the source. But it wasn't the creek I knew. The banks had been violently eroded, the channel had been straightened, and the water had been redirected onto my property. I followed the flow upstream, and there it was. A makeshift berm built by someone with a bulldozer. Someone had redirected the creek and aimed it straight at my land. The HOA had made their soggy field problem my problem. They had weaponized the creek. I wasn't just angry. I was calm, calculating. This wasn't about the $1,200 fine anymore. This was about accountability. I grabbed my phone, documented everything, took photos, recorded videos. Unpermitted diversion of a natural watercourse, accelerated erosion. The HOA had created the very problem they were now fining me for. I spent the rest of the day researching, pulling out topographical maps, checking my property survey, gathering all the evidence I could. It was time to take action, not with rage, but with precision. The next HOA meeting was in a clubhouse that smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and quiet desperation. Karen sat at the front, flanked by her 2 loyal board members. I walked in cool and professional and took my seat. When it was my turn, I didn't beg or argue. I stood up and said, "Thank you for the opportunity, Karen. I'm not here to discuss the fine. I'm here to discuss the cause of the mud that prompted the fine." I walked to the front, opened my portfolio, and turned it to face the board. I showed them photos of my mud-caked driveway, followed by satellite images of the creek's original path, and then the new straightened channel that now ran directly across my land. I wasn't just presenting photos. I was presenting a professional analysis. The unpermitted alteration of the creek, the erosion, the damage. It was all there in black and white. Karen's face turned red as she tried to defend herself, but it was too late. She had overplayed her hand. The room was silent. I wasn't the only one who had been wronged. The other homeowners started speaking up. Their stories poured out petty fines, ridiculous violations. It wasn't just about the creek anymore. It was about Karen's abuse of power. I wasn't finished yet. I made a call to David Miller, a lawyer friend from my Army days. Dave specialized in environmental and property law. He loved taking on arrogant bullies, and when I explained the situation, he grinned. "Oh, this is beautiful, Mark," he said. "We've got them by the short hairs." Dave guided me through a series of legal actions. I filed a FOIA request for all documents related to the HOA, then went to the Department of Environmental Protection with my evidence. Every move I made was deliberate. The more I dug, the deeper the hole Karen was in. They thought they could scare me with legal threats, but instead they were documenting their own malice. Finally, after weeks of gathering evidence, it was time to act. I put everything together, the unpermitted work, the financial transactions, Karen's ties to the contractor, and filed it all in a formal letter. I wasn't just rejecting the fine, I was demanding action. I wanted her removed from the board, the damages paid, and a full audit of the HOA's finances. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about the entire community that had suffered under Karen's reign. The letter was a bomb dropped right into the heart of her kingdom. The silence that followed was deafening. 2 weeks passed before I heard anything. And when the response came, it wasn't from a lawyer. It was from Karen herself. She tried to rally the neighborhood against me, spinning a narrative of me trying to bankrupt the HOA over a minor drainage issue. But I wasn't done yet. I called in a reporter, fed her the story, and gave her the evidence. The next HOA meeting was a spectacle. Karen tried to play the victim, but I had the high ground. I showed the photos, the contracts, the proof of everything she had done. The crowd was stunned. Then the county investigator stood up, confirming that there was an open investigation into the HOA's illegal activities. Karen's face went white. The room was filled with murmurs of disbelief. She tried to bang her gavel, but her hand was shaking. Her empire was crumbling, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. The fallout was swift and brutal. The county fined the HOA, and investigations began into the illegal work. Karen's allies started to crumble. Gary, one of her board members, resigned first, then Brenda. And when it was time to hold Karen accountable, the entire community rose up. It didn't end with a lawsuit. It ended with a revolution. The new board was transparent, fair, and accountable. The HOA, once a source of fear, became a place for actual community building. The neighbors, once divided, were united by a shared sense of justice. And me, I got my driveway fixed, my land restored, and my pride back. But the real victory wasn't the fine or the property. It was watching Karen, the tyrant, brought down by her own arrogance. She thought she could bully me. She didn't realize I was playing a much bigger game. And in the end, I won not just for me, but for the entire community. So what about you? Have you ever been bullied by a Karen or an HOA? How did you handle it?